Hello and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with Alana Quintana Albertson. I'm Trisha, and for the past 5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams, learning the business so I could share it with authors. Prior to coming to Amazon, I worked as a graphic artist, project manager, and educator. Currently, I'm privileged to work on the KDP University team, helping authors use the KDP website to make the most of their author journey. But enough about me. We're here to talk to Alana. Alana Quintana Albertson is a Latina best-selling romance author of 31 books. Her newest Latinx romance comedy series, Spicy Rich Tacos, has earned her a deal with Berkeley Publishing, and the first book in the series, Ramón and Julieta, was optioned for television. Alana holds a Master's of Education from Harvard University and a Bachelor of Arts in English from Stanford University. She's the former president of Romance Writer of America's Contemporary Romance, Young Adult, and Chick Lit chapters. She's the founder of the nonprofit dog rescue Pugs and Roses. She lives in San Diego, California, with her husband, 2 young sons, and too many pets. Welcome, Alana. There you are.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think I can say for all of us, we're totally thrilled to have you part of this. We were so excited when you agreed to meet with us.
I'm just so, as a former teacher, I just love the concept of KDP University and the fact that it's free and accessible to everybody. And I think it's so important for people to share their stories, their successes, and their failures, because this is a very tough career, but it can be incredibly rewarding. And I think often people, don't want to brag, or they don't want to share something horrible that's happened in the publishing career. So I just think this is just such a valuable resource, and I'm honored to be part of it. So,
well, thank you so much. So, what made you transition from being a teacher over to a writer?
Well, just watching that video at the beginning, which was so inspiring, but same thing. I mean, I always wanted to write, but I was running a test. Well, so initially I did private, I did educational inequity programs through like UCSD and Stanford and Harvard, where it would help get kids from underserviced populations into college. And so that was initially what I did. And then after Harvard, I started my own tutoring company. I would get people into college and graduate school, and I would tutor all the exams, SAT, GMAT, LSAT. I love tests. I'm a weirdo on that. It's like I love taking a standardized test, so that was my company. But just like another person said in that video that I thought was just so inspiring is I had a newborn, and I was home, and I, wanted to write. And so I just started writing. I did write a little prior to that, but I didn't publish until I had a newborn. And I just didn't want to drive. I mean, I was driving to commute to tutor, and I just wanted to be at home. So that's where it really opened my mind up to self-publishing. Prior to that, I did have a book and an agent, and I was kind of doing the path, but I wasn't really on my radar about self-publishing.
So when did you start self-publishing? Approximately how long ago?
So I self-published my first book in 2013, so just like now. So it's my, I guess, 8-year anniversary. And that book was a book that was initially I wrote as a chick lit book back when chick lit was a big thing. So if you don't know, it was not really romance. It was more of kind of like a Sex and the City type vibe. That was a book first. And so it was more about the woman's journey, but it wasn't necessarily women's fiction. It was younger, it was hipper. And so I loved it. And I wrote this book, unfortunately, and I got this incredible agent who is still my agent, Jill Marcel, who she's just absolutely incredible. But right when I finished the book and we started shopping, the market had shifted and no one was really buying chick lit. So she suggested I write it as a romance. And I hadn't really read romance at that point. I was really into chick lit, and so one of my favorites was Elisa Valdez Rodriguez, Dirty Girl Social Club, which was one of the reasons I wanted to write. if you haven't read her book, it's incredible. It's about 6 Latina college-educated women in Boston, and that book I was living in Boston, and it was just, I was like, I have to write. So anyway, I transitioned that book into romance, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I had just gotten into the romance genre, and I didn't really understand how to plot or how to write. And so anyway, I had a friend who self-published, and she said, you should self-publish this book. And I just thought, okay, why not? And so I did, and it got some sales, but that book definitely was not a success. But you know, it was weird that again, what someone said in the previous video, that I put it up and people bought it who weren't related to me. I thought that was just incredibly wild, and I got a cover which is so dated now I'd be embarrassed to show, but at the time I thought it was great, and it was fun. It was fun, but I didn't really expect anything from it. I still at that point thought I would, you know, get into traditional publishing, and I never saw the indie career that I would have.
Well, congratulations on 8 years. That's amazing. And
That's
some, what,
crazy.
30
I didn't even
books
realize.
later?
Yeah, 30. My 31st will be in February. Yeah.
Nice.
Unless I sneak a couple books out before.
Now, your format isn't just, we're going to talk today about long form, which is the novels and the romance, but also serial content. Do you want to talk about the difference between the two of those and what that means to you?
Yeah, I'm so excited serial fiction has kind of blown up, because it's been my thing since 2014. And I used to be like, oh, I write serial fiction. Everyone's like, well, you do what? And I just, first I'll explain briefly what serial fiction is. So serial fiction, first I'll say what it's not. It is not a book chopped into different chapters. It's a completely different format of writing. And the way I got into serial fiction was I was obsessed with the television show Homeland. I just absolutely loved it and the writing. And I wanted to write kind of a television show. I didn't know anything about screenwriting at this point, but I wanted to write a kind of a small little novellas. And so I started researching what was out there, and I found some other similar type books. And this was in KU1, and back then you got paid for shorter books. This is 2014 when I released the first one, December. It was called Conceit of My 7 Deadly Seals serial. And so I would release short 25,000 novellas, K novellas, but in a series. So they weren't, 7 would be a season, season 1, season 2. And so what serial fiction is short episodic kind of scenes that are episodes, and it's similar to the form of a TV show. It is not and I of course also write romance novels and other types of novels, but when you write an actual novel, you have a different story arc. And this, it's really important to have the cliffs and the rising actions, and to think of an overall series arc, a season arc. And it really teaches you how to write fast, especially when you're writing for an app like Vella. You learn how to kind of, and I don't mean fast in terms of typing fast or getting it out fast, but you're writing shorter things versus a huge book. Now, of course, you could write the full serial and then release it, and that's good, so you don't lock yourself in a plotting hole. But it really taught me kind of how to write on demand, and that has really shaped my career with my current television options. And had I not written serial fiction, I would not have any of the opportunities that I currently have. So I love serial fiction. I will always write serial fiction. I just find the format exciting, and Dickens did it, and he was the coolest, so writing wise. But, yeah.
So based on that description, would you say that the pacing is definitely different in serial fiction than long form?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would never torture my romance readers the way I torture if you're one of my fans, I apologize. I mean, I like to really, go there, and not that you don't want to go there with your other type of content, but I plot it for each episode, and I can talk about the difference between chapters and episodes, but for each episode, to end at this kind of point where you have to read it, and I learned years ago that, you never want to end a chapter where they're going to sleep, because then your reader's going to go to sleep. But more so in serial fiction, the only point of my chapter is to get you to buy my next chapter. And so you write, and that doesn't mean you can't have down moments, and there's different type of cliffhangers. You know, you can write emotional cliffhangers, you can write action cliffhangers, just different things. You can withhold information, but your goal is to get people to continue on. And obviously when someone purchases your book, you want them to complete their book, but your goal isn't for them to buy the next chapter. So it's a completely different mindset of how I craft it. And I was even yesterday crafting a new serial, and the final season of my best-selling serial, and I was noticing the way I plot versus the way I plot for my romance novels. And it's complete, like I literally plot on the cliffhangers. That is how I plot, versus I do not do that when I'm writing an actual novel.
Okay. So you come up with the cliffhanger and then you kind of work backwards. Is this what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So do you, when you're writing serial content, you know, with a novel, you know, you write the entire book and the arcs and you have everything planned out and then you release it. Now with serial content, do you do multiple series, or do you do multiple episodes that you release, you know, one at a time, or do you release like 5 episodes at a time, or what's your release schedule look like?
Yeah, so this is probably the best question. I do have a class in serial fiction, and I always teach, you know, do what I say and not what I do. So what you should do, what I think is the best. So, I mean, the question is whether you want to maximize revenue as well. So to me, the correct thing would be, you know, you want to hook in the reader, right? So if I was starting a brand new serial today, what I would do was I would have, you know, the minimum of 10 episodes. So that should be, I'd say around 10,000 words in novella length. And I would release I would put out those 10 episodes, and then I would release those on a regular schedule. I did not do that. I also did not know what serial fiction was. I was just kind of winging it. What I did was I would write a book, and then, and I was having these great, you know, bestsellers, and you know, everyone in you know, kind of the romance world and the new publishing world. So I had a, you know, my first breakout hit, which was Invincible, and it did really well. And they were like, write the next book. But I was like, no, I want to write a serial. And then I would write the next big book, and then I'd write the serial. So I would slowly torture my audience. But it was because serial fiction didn't have as big of an audience. Now I would totally not do that, because there's all these incredible ways to release it. But to me, I was kind of like slotting them in between my books. Do not do that. I mean, there was a review. So my first season, so it was 7 novellas, so 20,000 novellas. And what I did, I think I released the first one in December of 2014, and the last one in like May of 2017. And I mean, there's some reviews, I think, on number 5 where they're like, you know, 1 star, I absolutely love this book, it's the best serial ever, but this author will never, ever, ever finish it. And it wasn't that I didn't intend to finish it, it was that I didn't really, you know, prior to all these serial fiction apps and Vella, there wasn't really kind of a good system, and I would make more money writing a novel. So I was it was just this weird passion project. But if I was releasing today, I would not do that. I would actually write 10 and then, you know, say, hey, I'm going to have 7 Deadly Seals Saturday. And every Saturday, you are going to expect an episode. You want it to be like a TV show. You want regularity. And the biggest thing, the biggest mistake you're going to make writing serial fiction is not releasing on a regular schedule. So again, do as I say, not as I do, because I just have no clue. But I know now.
So what's the difference between a reader that's reading long form and a reader that's reading serial content?
They're completely different. And so one of the things I'm saying is my readers don't read this. You know, my readers read books, and that's great. You know, keep those readers. I have had the most, I mean, I have the most incredible readers in my novels, but my serial readers are also absolutely incredible. They're incredibly diverse, which is really important. I mean, all different ages, all different countries, all different nationalities, backgrounds. I mean, just such an incredible, it's just a different experience. And the way I usually describe it is, and it depends for people, but if I want to read a book it's kind of a different mindset. So I pick up my book and I sit there, and, you know, in a perfect world, I'm, you know, having lemonade and, you know, relaxing, and it's this enjoyable time. But a serial fiction, I can pick up my phone, I can wait in the car for my son, and I can read an episode. Of course, I'm going to want to continue reading. But I think today, especially in the culture with, so I got really into Instagram, and my next frontier is TikTok. I'm not really on it, but that's my goal for the year. But if you look at TikTok and the short form video content, to me, serial content is like that. So it's not the experience of I have 2 hours, and my kids are asleep and I'm going to read a book. It's more like I'm cooking and the water's boiling, I'm going to read an episode. And so it opens you up, but you have to write it in that mindset too. It's not just enough to think, okay, well, as an author, you could think, well, maybe they could just read a chapter of my book. It's not. There is crossover, so I don't want to say there's not, but it is also opens you up to so many different people, including amazing movie producers. And I've had such incredible opportunities from it. So, you know, and serial fiction is just amazing.
So how do you reach these different readers? So if you're an established author and you're writing long form and you have this great following, and then you're trying to reach the serial, you know, those readers that read serial content, what's the difference in marketing to them? How do you reach them? Where do you find them?
I mean, definitely social media. So versus paid advertisements. I tried paid advertisements. I definitely do paid advertisements for my books. I mean, absolutely. And you know, of course, if Amazon ads allowed you to advertise Vella, I would hop on that. But regardless, I mean, social media was a way. But more importantly, it was really kind of definitely social media, but just kind of getting that content out there. And once you have a breadth of I mean, if you have 4 or 5 episodes, you're not going to really see something. But the first time I went on an app, so I released the 7 novellas. There weren't really fiction apps. Yes, there were Wattpad, but that was free. And then I had met the CEO of Radish, which was one of the original fiction apps at UA. I was speaking for 6-figure authors. This was 2017. And I told him I wrote an actual serial, and he begged, it was in KU, it was making great money. He begged me to remove it and go on this app. And I literally thought he was insane. I was like, I sobbed taking the books down, because I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've done, because I'm actually making income on it. I have fans. I was about to go into season 2. But what happened is I had 180,000 words. And so when you released them on the app daily, there was so much content, and, you know, the content was the correct form. Again, it wasn't a book. It wasn't, and I'm going to talk briefly about backlists, because I can argue about this with authors. Because I had the form and I had that breadth of content, I had 60 episodes, at 62,000 word episodes that were releasing daily. It just kind of built, you know, and then of course you make the first couple free, and then you just hook them, you know, but that's up to you. It's your job to hook them. So I would definitely social media. And I did just want to say about the backlist. A lot of people say to me, well, I see on these apps, all apps, Vella too, you know, I'll just put up my book first, or I'll just put out, you know, just other things. And, you know, that you can do that. Of course, you can do anything. That's the beauty of self-publishing. Like, there's no right or wrong answers, but that's not really kind of what's intended. And that's not necessarily the best reader experience. And you will, the top people who, you know, are going to dominate serial fiction are going to be the people who have true serials, not books chopped up. So, I mean, I'll die on that hill.
Okay. So if you had to say one thing, you know, so we talked a little bit, you need, the pacing's different, it's quicker, it's not chopped up content. Approximately how long is an episode? How long is a serial? And do you know, how many episodes are you going to publish before, or season before you're like, okay, I'm done with this?
Yeah, so I plotted this day one. So day one, I knew my series arc before I wrote a word. Like I always say, hands tied behind my back. I haven't plotted, I haven't written. So I knew what I'm gonna have to be very clear, mine is a romance, but it is really kind of a mystery thriller. And so in order to do that, I have a lot of romance authors saying, oh, well, how can you do it? So I knew was gonna have 3 seasons, and so there were gonna be 3 happily ever afters. So I had a overall series arc, which was, the question of the series. Then I had a season arc, and each season had 2 arcs. One a romance arc. Because I write romance and I'm not allowed to kill the hero, I was going to give you happily ever after at the end of each season, but that was not the main arc. And then I was also going to answer a smaller question. So for season 1, my first thing was, who killed this girl, named Tiffany, right? And so that was the question, right? The overall series arc, what are the secrets of this Navy SEAL team, right? And then each season had a romance. Okay, so that's the first thing that I plotted out, right? And it was called 7 Deadly SEALs, so I should have had 7 seasons, but it ended up being 3. Technically, though, it's 360,000 words, so we could put it into 7 regardless. I do 2,000 word episodes. That's loose, around 1,500 to 2,000 word episodes. Every now and then there'll be a shorter episode just because, there is, but in general, it's 1,500 to 2,000 words. And then again, I was initially releasing them in novellas. So they were initially 25,000 words, 7 of them, though they've gotten shorter over the years. So they're kind of like at around 10,000 now. So that's how it is. The entire serial is 360,000 words, but that's okay. 3 seasons.
3 seasons. All right.
Yeah.
So
I could continue on. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I missed that.
Oh, no. I didn't mean to continue on the thing. I mean, it's so successful that, and I've made a lot of money on it that I'm like, I know exactly where it's ending in 3. And then I'm still like, but what about season 4? And so that's, and now that I'm into television writing with my own book that got optioned, you have to think that way, right? So, you can think of the start and ending, but if it is really successful, do you not want to not lose those fans? And the way I thought of it is, a spin-off and different things. But, you kind of get addicted to it and the ideas come. So
if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody who's just getting into this, whether or not they've been writing long form or they're just starting out, what should they learn first?
First, read successful serials, not just mine. There's a bunch, and Tamara Lush, one of my friends, she's incredible. She's a Wattpad star. She's amazing. AC Fuller has a serial. These are currently in book form. Rob Thayer was huge. So read actual serials versus books and try to understand the format. Number 2, watch television. I'm giving you an excuse to binge. And you're not watching television as a viewer, you're watching it as a reader, and that's not as fun. It's really not as fun, but you're watching and you're writing, how do they end their scenes, how do they end the episodes, and then more importantly, you're internalizing at the end of every episode, do I have to watch the next episode, or do I not have to? Like, to me, what makes an incredible bingeable series is the fact that you cannot stop. And so to me, it's like go internal, go in deep, and kind of feel like, what is my emotion? I kind of journal when I watch a show, and instead of kind of just enjoying it, I think, why did I want to watch this? Why didn't I want to watch this? And once you kind of see that and see the structure, it really becomes clear to you, and then you do see it differently from novels.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we've got loads of questions coming in, so let's take a few of those. So we have somebody who is going from screenwriting to novel writing. Any tips?
Oh, you're so ahead of the game. Like, I mean, just absolutely. But yeah, I mean, one of the main things, I went the other way, right? So I went from, and I learned, I mean, I did this thing at Hedgebrook with Meredith Stein, who's a showrunner of Homeland, and she ended up doing my pilot. And so, I mean, the stuff she taught me was absolutely invaluable. The main difference, obviously, is the exposition. So you've got your dialogue on top, you know how to end scenes. Again, you're just, I remember she was screaming at me 3 lines of dialogue max, and I've taken that now for all my books, because I used to go on these long kind of author things. So, you're totally ahead of the game, but what you really, it is still a serial novel. So you do need to kind of, the mistake I've seen from these incredible screenwriters who have gone is it's kind of too screenwriting, you know. So, you know, the beauty in a novel is you get to see what's in the character's head and kind of a lot of that. And of course, you don't want to go too heavy. So I don't really want to say that because I see books that are just completely interior monologue, and you do not want that. But you definitely want to cultivate that. But, I mean, you're going to kill it. So that's awesome.
So Terry wants to know, when you got to a tipping point as an author, is there one or two things that you did to reach that successful point?
Yes. So again, this is another thing. I've done everything wrong as an author. So I mean, that's part of the reason I teach stuff is like, I know exactly what I would do if I was launching myself today. But like, so first I'm going to talk about what the things I did bad, and then I'll tell you what actually worked. I would have a huge success. Most notably, my book Badass was #3 in the store. It was with Linda Barlow. She's probably the best author ever. She's incredible. We were like top 10 for like at least a month. But I mean, the thing is, and what you're supposed to do is immediately write another book in the same genre and the same series right after. And I didn't do that. Again, I wanted to write the stupid serial, and then I was like, oh, look, you know, like something else. So the most successful thing I did was first, I'm always an early adopter, which is my point of Ella, which is my point of, I mean, I did Facebook ads when there weren't as many authors who were doing it. I, you know, did Amazon ads early. So, you know, if there's new stuff, definitely try that. You know, and then it's not all going to work out. I've had some complete flops too. So my point is I did advertise, and that really helped. And the other thing I think I did was, this is something that I teach in a different class. One of the advices you always hear is kind of write the next book, which I even just said, which is, you know, write the next one and whatever. And you always hear the term write to market. And all that's great to kind of get noticed, but you really need to put your spin on it. So what I've always done, which I think I've done well, is kind of write the breakout book, right? And so to me, there's a very distinct formula in that. And what, like, one of my first successful books, Invincible, actually my first successful book, because my first book, which was Love Waltzes In, which is now The Swan and the Sergeant, I've retitled it like 200 times. But that book like did not do well. But my first successful book was this book called Invincible, and I was nobody, and had this great blurb, and it kind of went viral. And back then it was through bloggers. But what I did, the reason I think it was successful, I took it, and so you want to set the trend, not follow the trend. So I knew what was big at the time was dark romance, right? And then there were also Navy SEAL books out. But the Navy SEAL books, they were really hero-y, and I dated a Navy SEAL, and it didn't necessarily have the best thing. So I was like, you know, okay, I'm married now, but like, I mean, millions of years ago. And so I thought, hey, you know, how can I take these two trends of these top successful things that I'm seeing right now on Amazon. So I consistently looked at the top 100, and I thought, hey, you know, there's like this book, The Sweet Romance About This Great Navy SEAL, and they're these super dark books. So I wrote this kind of dark book about a Navy SEAL, and it blew up. And then we did this again with Badass. So with Badass, we were looking, and there were some stepbrother books out, and they were huge, right? But because they were stepbrother, they were getting banned a lot of places. They weren't getting that much kind of stuff. And then, you know, there were some bad boy books out, but they were kind of, you know, also, and so Linda, and again, Linda Barlow, so she co-wrote that one with me. So she's just incredible. She's like won every award, and she's been traditionally published. And I met her while we were doing a paranormal anthology, but she was just incredible. We kind of took the trends. We wrote kind of a stepbrother book, but they weren't really married, and it was clean in that sense. I mean, it was definitely steamy, but it wasn't like, you know, gonna get me banned. And then we wrote, but we did the Navy SEAL trend, you know, and made it more bad boy. And so we again did it. So I kind of like to mash my genres, and I see what's top. And unfortunately, this works best if you write fast. And so, you know, there was a reverse harem was huge. And so a couple of years ago, I wrote a reverse harem really fast, and that one did incredibly well. I couldn't last year because of my trad contract, but bully romance was big. And had I done, I had a plot, actually have a book, I probably won't release it, but I would have released that. So I'm always watching what's there, but I'm not just following the trend. I'm spinning it to kind of keep it fresh. And at least that gets me seen. So ads, writing to
Gotcha.
market, but not really to market plus. And you have to believe in yourself, and you can't give up. The only successful writer never quits. I've wanted to quit so many times. I mean, this is a tough business.
Mhm. What would you say is like the top challenge or top challenges of writing serial fiction?
Oh gosh. Keeping it fresh and keeping keeping it not predictable. And also when you get in a super long series, like I think I'm on like word 220,000 in some Delhi seals, it's like keeping it straight, you know what I mean? Keep figuring out. So I recommend a series Bible. I still don't have one, but I do have incredible editors. Remembering everything. Oh, and the other thing is, a huge mistake I see is not answering any questions. Have you ever watched a television show where there's just all these loose threads and then you're finally just done? And you're like, okay, I'm not watching it anymore. You're not answering it. So you want to give the reader something, and then you want to mess them up again on something new. So you do want to answer some of their questions, or they will abandon you. And I think the reason my poor readers have stayed with me is because I do give them some resolution, but then I just completely continue to mess with them. But you do want to tie up some you don't want just a string of loose threads.
So that kind of brings up a question for me is you mentioned your editor. I think what I've seen with some people think that these, when you're writing serial content, you just write something and throw it out there. What's the process between writing and actually publishing serial content? Do you go through the same, editors or beta readers, things like that before you publish?
Yeah, so my fantasy is to have a good beta reader, which unfortunately I've never had. I hear all these authors have these great ones, and I just haven't. But so I have all these amazing long-suffering editors, and I mean I use like four editors for every book because they all give me different things. But what I would recommend, and what I did initially, was I wrote at least a novella length first before I released it, and I edited those together. So I would send 25,000 words out, and at least that was edited, and then I would release those things. Now, that being said, and especially when you're dealing with something like Vala where you want to get the episodes out, towards the second season, I didn't actually do that. So I released the first season all nice and edited it, and I do write pretty clean. But for the second season, I would just kind of write and pray, right? Like I would just write it, stick it through Grammarly, and put it up. And I would only do that if you're really like, you either have someone else to do it, or you feel very, very confident that you can get it done. I mean, by this point, I had all these books out and I kind of felt secure of it. However, I would still then, before I released the novellas, I would still then send it to the editor, but I didn't send it to my editor in chapters. I think, I mean, that's fine for a copy editor if you're just looking for grammar, but it's very hard for an editor to kind of get a story structure with like 1,000 words, because they don't know where you're going with that. So
Right.
when in the few times I had done that, like I tried that with other editors, their comments were completely wrong, and not their fault at all, but they were like, oh, well, this makes no sense. I'm like, well, it's about to, right? And so that's not really fair to them or whatever. And so their comments aren't necessarily as relevant. So
Mhm.
the best thing would be to do it in batches.
So do you, once you release like the first 10 episodes, and then so that gives people to get their teeth in, and then you're like, okay, now you need a pretty steady diet of this to keep feeding episodes in. Is that weekly, monthly, quarterly? How often do you put a new episode up?
So this is a really good question, and I have data to back this up. So that's what I love, is data. So basically, again, with the first one, again, I did novellas, and then, Radish had it released daily. But then we used their data and reader acquisition type stuff to figure out, the best release days and the top people on their platform, including myself. And so we decided, it was best to do once or twice a week. So whatever you set that reader expectation, and again, I I don't because I stopped releasing it. But like if you're saying every Saturday, get it out every Saturday. Whatever you can actually do. If you're awesome and can do twice a week, you want to do Tuesday and Saturday, that's awesome. But don't do what I do, which is like release an episode and then ghost everyone. First, you will lose all the readers. So yeah, weekly is ideal. I think less frequently, unless you have a huge following, is a very, very bad idea. More frequent, twice a week, I mean, I think that'd be great. You need to have that content. I would rather have the twice a week. I would rather have the once a week and have it going, I'm having 7 Deadly Seal Saturdays and I'm going it for a year, then, I haven't released an episode and I can't even recall how long. So like a year and a half. So sorry, readers. I have them written. But, yeah.
They're there. They're coming.
Yeah, I am now traditionally published. The book isn't out, so it comes in February. I'm not allowed to release a lot of stuff. So so that's my excuse to the reader. Just in case I have any readers watching, I will get you my books. I promise they'll be out.
What's the average length of each? I think we kind of talked about this. What's the average length of each episode?
Each episode, it to me is 1,500 words around, so usually 2,000, but 2,000 is the goal. It usually ends up at 15. I never go under 1,000. Maybe I have like once or twice, but I'm not proud of it.
Is there a different type of editor for long form content and serial content?
I mean, a good editor, can do anything, but they do need to understand the structure. So I've just been blessed to be working with the most incredible editors ever. But you definitely, I think the genre is incredibly important so that they again, mine was kind of more of like a thriller romance. But yeah, you would want them to understand and not kind of, look at a specific, structure and say, oh, this isn't fitting into that structure, because then your edits wouldn't be relevant. Again, this is kind of a newer thing, even though I've been doing this for a while. I believe there are going to be more people who pop up that know how to edit fiction, though, right now there might not be. Now with Amazon doing this, it's going to become more mainstream. For years I would say, oh, I'm like huge on radish, and nobody had a clue. They're like, you like to eat radishes? Like nobody knew what I was talking about. So.
Right. And when you mentioned Amazon, what you're talking about is Kindle Villa.
Right. Kindle Villa, is the serial platform, the new serial platform. So basically, I do truly think that will change and get it more mainstream, because currently, there are other apps out there, and just Amazon. What the beauty of Amazon for anything is, it knows exactly what. So it's so dynamic in terms of the platform. So if I go on to Amazon, it knows the last book I read, it's just another book that I actually want to read. And so, that type of kind of search capability, and so Amazon is now getting to the field. And so I'm very excited to see, what's going to happen with Vella. Whereas before, some people would know about different serial apps, but I would talk to so many writers groups and nobody had a clue. They're like, you eat cereal? No, I write serial fiction. Nobody had a clue what no one had any idea what I was talking about. So
how do you interact with your readers? So we talked a lot about social media. You find your readers on social media. Do you have a different social media account for your serial content versus your long form?
No, so I'm not the best at this. There are definitely people who are so much better at this. My authors group's kind of dead. My primary thing has always been Instagram, and had a very good following, though I've been very lazy posting, mainly because I haven't been releasing, but Instagram was always great for me. However, and I teach class on Instagram, and I still believe there's value there. If I was again launching today, I would be 1,000% all in on TikTok, and that is my goal for myself this year, is to just full on, jump on that. You need to, just like with fiction trends, what I said about, bad boy books or any other type of books that you're trying to write, serial fiction, whatever's, new, you need to see kind of where your fans are. And currently, I think, TikTok is the place to be. And I've only posted twice there, so I'm not even doing a good job at it. But yeah, so at the time I was all over Instagram, but it was just for all my stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Now let's talk just a little bit about Kindle Villa. Within Kindle Villa, there's an opportunity to leave comments for your readers or interact, break that wall for the readers. How do you use that effectively?
This is the best thing ever. This is my favorite thing about serial content. Okay, so this is not reviews. I mean, there are reviews, right? That's a totally different thing. My reader experience and my comments has been literally the best thing ever. That is what also keeps people reading. Another person who does this, again, way better than I do, is Tamara Lesh. If you've seen how she interacts, but basically you're creating a community of people. And one of my favorite things is not even when they're just asking me a question. That first off, obviously, if they ever comment, you respond. But when they interact with each other, it's like they're like, and they start like giving theories about the book. And one person gave a comment about one of my books, and I had already written something else, and I was like, that's such a good idea. Like, and I rewrote the book, based on one of their things. It creates a community of your work. And I think that's every author's goal, is to have kind of a rabid group of fans who are interacting and talking about your work. So ask open-ended questions, communicate with them, do not ignore them. Yeah.
Where do you get your inspiration for your writing? We have a couple questions around where's your inspiration come from?
Yeah, I mean, just my life, and definitely. I'm constantly thinking of what ifs. What if this happened? Stuff that happened in my 20s. And I mean, I've had a pretty, I used to be a professional ballroom dancer, and, I just lived in San Diego, and just, had a bunch of different things. But you always want to, what to me keeps a book fresh is kind of always insert, obviously they're not autobiography, right? But kind of inserting not yourself, but your experience in it. I'm Mexican, my mom's Mexican, I'm half, but just kind of also that feeling of kind of not really fitting in either way is kind of a theme in my books. And then different cultures and things. But every time I read a television show, every time I read a television show, so that every time I watch a television show, every time I read a book, I think, what if this happened, or what's the other ending of that? And I'm just constantly thinking about that, or watching a television going, oh, that's great, but what if it was here, a different spin on it? But really kind of who you are, and all the amazing different things about you, your ethnicity, where you live, your family structure, your gender identity, whatever. All those things create this amazing, unique person, and you're the only person who can write that story. And so when you find your voice, it's just so beautiful.
Are there different genres that may work better in serial format than with long form?
So I do think, because of Kindle Villa, so in the past, people would say, oh, only romance works. Well, there were certain apps that would only acquire romance. So to me, that's, you can't say that. That's chicken and egg, right? Like you can say, they weren't allowing other things. I think Kindle Villa is going to open the floodgates here. And so, no, all genres would work, but it's like a television show, right? So it doesn't matter what your genre, it matters your writing style. You need to be engaging people and getting them to come back for more. So what I've seen that currently works, obviously, so mine is a mystery thriller, romance, a telenovela type, story, would be amazing. I have one that I plan to do, but, fantasy, paranormal, a crime thriller, literally anything's going to work, but it's the writing style. And if you see it in a television form, then it's going to work on a serial form. But anyone who says to me, oh, well, I've only seen romance works, well, that's because certain apps are only allowing that. So do not make that mistake.
Gotcha. So how do you, for serial content, do you have a strategy for getting hooks in each episode? How does that, what does that look like? What do you do differently for the first 3 episodes? Because they're usually free. to get somebody in, and then how do you keep those hooks going throughout?
Yeah, I mean, I plot the hook. So versus with before I've written a word, I make sure that I'm gonna slay you on my hooks. Now, you know, the goals get, so what am I saying that you have to turn the page? So I make sure that my hooks are multidimensional. I do, you can't just do always an action hook or an always a, you know, so sometimes I'll do something where the character is withholding information from another character, or so, you know, there's that type of cliffhanger, like they, you know, they love him or they hate him, or, you know, something like that, or secrets are always great. But, you know, so I try to vary it. So then there's physical hooks where you're in danger and you're going to die, you know, I mean, so I make sure I vary them. And then I do mini hooks and big hooks. So mini hooks are at the end of each episode, and the big hooks are at the end of kind of my, if you graft my thing, it would be like hook, 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 hook. And the big hooks are the end of the novellas, you know, kind of the end of the 20,000 words. And so one of the things that if you're doing an episode on Vella, to me, that's a scene in a TV show. If you're doing 10, that would kind of end up in the novella at some point. If you wanted to release it later, to me, that's an episode. And then of course I have a season. So I have you know, I have 7 to 10 scenes, or 7 to 14 scenes that make up one episode that makes up, and then 7 episodes make up a season, and then I have 3 seasons.
Okay. I was trying to do the math real quick. It's not going to happen. So I think everybody will just kind of have to figure that out of how many episodes that turns into.
Yeah, so for me, it's 180 episodes, 360,000 words. So each, you know, one is around, like, I mean, the math isn't perfect because some of them are longer than whatever, but yeah.
Let's talk about a couple other things that we haven't talked about so far. And for novels or long form, covers contain images, and then they contain branding, like titles and author names and everything. So there's a whole look to it. With serial content, especially on Kindle Villa, it's just an image, right?
Yes, absolutely. So there's so many options. You can use stock, so you don't need to feel like that because it's a smaller picture, but you definitely want to make sure that it meets genre expectations. And so by genre, you might, you know, it's important to look at what's selling, you know, normally, obviously on Amazon, in that genre, right? So if it's a romance, you know, you either have, you know, the one person or an intimate moment or whatever, but if it's fantasy, you have that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of options with stock and everything. But regardless, I'm all about the branding. I'm obsessed with branding. You know, so even if you're off on Vella, like that's how you're getting there, but then how you're promoting it in terms of your advertisements, then if I'm doing an ad for Vella, my ad is going to show it in a picture in that circle. It's not going to show it as a book, right? So you do not want to confuse readers, because right now what's happening is readers are going to be confused for a while. They don't understand this, and you know, you want them to have the correct reader expectation, which is a big thing of mine. Like, you don't want them to think they're reading a book. So make sure your branding is consistent across your channels.
Is the title, is the way you title different than with long form?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So for my episode titles, they're like, I think like I think the first episode when I was about to put it on Valo, I was like, he's innocent, right? So that was the title, versus a, you know, in a book, I would probably just put their name. Actually, I usually just say their name, like Mia chapter 1, like nobody cares. But the title you can always use as a cliffhanger as well.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. But you don't want to give away, stuff. You don't want them people scrolling through your episode titles and then thinking, oh, now I know what happens. So it's a fine line. Tease, tease, but don't tell.
I think we've answered most of these. Sorry, I'm just kind of scrolling through real quick.
I did want to say about the opportunities, because I think it's really, so one of the best things that happened, I briefly talked about that, is because I wrote serial fiction, I got into screenwriting, and then I wanted to write a pilot of this, and then I applied to Hedgebrook, which is this incredible all-women's retreat for writers in Whidbey Island, Washington. And there I was with the showrunner of Homeland, which was just my dream because I wrote the series because I'd done her show, and she did my pilot, meaning I wrote it and she workshopped it, and it's incredible. That's all props to her. But because of that opportunity, when my book Ramón and Julieta, so that book's traditionally published, and then we went to auction for not just the publishing rights but for the film and TV rights. But because I had screenwriting experience, and the only reason I had screenwriting experience is because I wrote the serial, but because I had screenwriting experience, I will not only be the executive producer of my show, I will be in the writer's room, and I could show them a pilot that I had done. And so I think it's very, as a writer, you always dream big and all these kind of things. And, if I can do it, you can do it. And to me, learning a different style of writing, getting out of your comfort zone can create all the opportunities. So to me, I think it's incredibly important for you to kind of, think of all the different opportunities that writing serial fiction can open up for you, because it's opened up an incredible world for me.
So if you had to say there's one thing for individuals that are that they're successful in long form, they've done it really, really well, and all of a sudden they're like, I want to take this opportunity to do this. Would you say, okay, write in the same world as your long form so you can get some crossover, or start something completely different and completely new?
I would definitely write in the world, but I would not write the same thing. And again, what I think I said earlier, the biggest mistake I've seen is people are like, well, I have a book that I haven't put up and it's done, but I was going to put it on pre-order, so I'm just going to put it up chapter by chapter by chapter, and then when it's done, I'm going to release it in normal Kindle. To me, that's a mistake, and that works, and you could still make some money in front, but that's not the purpose of it. To me, it's a different thing, so yes, do the same world, but maybe instead of making it just a romance novel with an end, make it a serial, and kind of, I mentioned Chicklet, how I started writing with that, having a bunch of different characters, and it's just a different thing, and explore that. So same world's good, but same format, in my opinion, is not going to be. I predict, and I could be wrong, in a year from now, the top people in Kindle Villa will be the true serial writers, mm-hmm. And I could be completely wrong. But Radish did experiment with this too. They got some amazing top authors to launch with them, and some of them just put up their backlist books, and those books didn't do as well as the actual serial books. And these authors were incredible. It had nothing to do. They were like the best writers and best books. They were top cut books versus serials. So I would say, yes, same world, but please make sure it's in serial content form.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your long form for just a second. We've got a couple questions about that. Do you use KDP Select for your long form content?
Absolutely. So one of the things, and this is kind of my other thing about, a lot of times authors, everything's all in, you're only wide, you're only KU, you're only trad, you're only indie. I am hybrid on everything. So I constantly I want all the readers. I want every single reader out there. I want you in serial fiction, and I want you here. So I regularly rotate I always launch in KU. Because I want the max amount of readers there. I then do go wide at certain points because I want the readers everywhere, and then I come back. Certain series you don't know until you release. Some series are always KU, Kindle Unlimited, and will always be Kindle Unlimited, and some were just more wide. Obviously, now that I'm traditionally published, those books are wide. I have no control over that, and it kind of, it's hard for me because I'm like, I want my KU readers to do it. I love the concept of KU. I've been on a budget before. I remember when I first married my husband, he was a Marine, and I would, before the e-readers, I would take an extra suitcase of books when I would visit him in Hawaii. He lived in Hawaii, I lived in San Diego, and then I would run out of books and I had nothing to read, and there wasn't a bookstore on the island. And so, I get, hey, you have $9, and so to me, KU is it's incredible. So yes, absolutely. I definitely use it. I always have a series in Kindle Unlimited, always.
How do you market those?
if it's in Kindle Unlimited, so there's so many different things you can do, but Amazon ads are absolutely incredible. Category ads, ads for your entire series. I used to do a lot of Facebook ads, but I'm more heavy on the Amazon ads these days. So that number one, clearly social media, definitely, again, as I said, TikTok, though I'm currently not on it, but launch it, get people to know. And when you move an entire series into KU, especially if you have the read through, you know, your goal is your first book is kind of the gateway book. You can either discount that book. There's a lot of great paid promotions. Obviously, the holy grail is BookBub, but you can also get, I love free Booksy, you know, make the first one free, the 5 free days in KU, use them. Oh my gosh, use them. You will get reads. People are afraid, oh, I wrote this book and I don't want to give it away from free. Okay, your book is a product, right? So once you've finished it, you divorce yourself from that book and you have to figure out how to market it. You know, you can put a different book free and get these readers and you will get some fans. I also am super into newsletter marketing. I also have a class on that. You know, so, and you have to be careful of that with, you know, KU to make sure, you know, that you don't violate any of the terms, but, you know, there's so many things, you know, write your, I have 31 books out, and you think in my brain, prior to getting into newsletter marketing, I think someone would read my new book and they would magically go through my backlist. No, they don't. You know what I mean? So that like I would have fans, they'd be like, oh, I never heard that book. I'm like, didn't you just read every book I read after you love this book? No. So tell your fans, send them a weekly newsletter like, hey, have you heard of this book I wrote 8 years ago today, and this is why I wrote it. And they're like, oh, I didn't know about it. Every time I send a newsletter, it makes sales. So I'm like, why didn't I just send a newsletter more often? And then of course your back matter. You definitely want incredible back matter. At the end of every book, immediately capture them. Where are you taking them to the next book? Don't just kind of leave them dry. I do all the things.
Okay. So we have just a couple more minutes. Young adult, do you find that works well in serial content?
It will. I'm confident it will. I mean, you know, currently, again, a lot of different apps, you know, have had restrictions on it. And young adult has done incredible on things like Wattpad. It'll absolutely do well on Amazon.
Okay.
Absolutely. Stock generation.
Are there any tools that you use different for writing serial than for your long form, or you're like, no, everything works the same? Like, is there different formatting needed for the interior or any changes that you have to do?
No, none. It's the same.
Okay.
I mean, covers for sure, but that's later in novellas. For episodes, you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, we are definitely at time. That was a ton of really amazing information. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. For those of you who joined us today, first of all, thank you for sticking with us and asking all those amazing questions. If you're interested, Kindle Villa is Amazon's new way of storytelling. You can, as a writer, you can publish your serial content, and as a reader, that is now available, so readers can read your content that you're posting. And as always, happy publishing, everyone.